Hey guys, it's Medicosis Perfectionalis, where medicine makes perfect sense. We continue our biology playlist. We are done with the series on the digestive system, so today we will review quickly digestion, absorption, and excretion. This video will have a very fast pace for you, unless you have watched the previous videos before, in which case it will be an amazing review. So please watch these videos in order. A matter of definitions. What's digestion? What is absorption? What is excretion? Digestion is when you break down macromolecules into micromolecules. Why do I do this? Because only the micromolecules are capable of being absorbed. What do you mean by absorption? I mean I have to cross a membrane. What do you mean? I will cross this membrane in your gut, which means the food will leave the lumen of the digestive tract and will go to the blood system, especially the tributaries of the portal vein, which will take them to the liver. Liver is metabolism land, and then the liver will put those doozy materials into the hepatic veins. This is lovely food. It has been digested, it has been absorbed, it has been worked upon, and now it's ready for your cells to enjoy. Hepatic veins, inferior vena cava, right atrium, right ventricle, pulmonary artery, lungs, get me some of that oxygen, go back to the left atrium, left ventricle, aorta, pump me to every single stinking cell in your body in the systemic circulation, and then the cell will take the oxygen and the food and will dump carbon dioxide and waste. Take the good stuff from the arterial side, give the bad stuff to the venous side, and then carbon dioxide and waste will go out of your body. Carbon dioxide through the lungs, waste through the kidneys. So excretion is waste leaving your body through the kidney and through the colon. This is the undigested, unabsorbed food that stays in the large intestine. Don't forget that your digestive system has a wall and a lumen. Tell me about the lumen. It's the cavity. How about the wall? It's made of 4 layers. Mucosa, submucosa, musculosa, serosa. Mucosa is mostly epithelium. Submucosa is mostly connective tissue. Musculosa is a smooth muscle layer. Where did the epithelium or the endothelium of the digestive system come from? From the endoderm. How about the muscle layers? From the mesoderm. How about the enteric nervous system? Ectoderm. Speaking of the nervous system, you have somatic nervous system, which is voluntary, autonomic, which is involuntary. The autonomic, the involuntary, is sympathetic, parasympathetic, and enteric nervous system in your gut. Myenteric for motility, submucosal for secretions. Sympathetic versus parasympathetic. Sympathetic, fight, flight. When you're running from a tiger, do you think you have time to digest, absorb, and go to the toilet? No! Therefore, I will shut the digestive system down. Sympathetic nervous system inhibits motility and secretion of your gastrointestinal system, which means it's going to relax the walls but contract and squeeze the sphincters so that you shut the system down. Parasympathetic is the exact opposite. Rest, digest, eat, read, and sit on a toilet. It will stimulate motility and secretion of the GI tract, which means it will contract the walls but relax the sphincters. We'll talk about digestion, then absorption, then excretion. First, digestion. We have intracellular digestion and extracellular digestion based on the location, or we have mechanical digestion and chemical digestions based on the mechanism. What do you mean by extracellular digestion? It happens within the gut lumen, not inside a specific cell. Intracellular happens in each cell of your body, where the cell takes in the nutrients, burn them in presence of oxygen to release energy, will also produce waste. All of this is called intracellular digestion, which happens in congruency with intracellular respiration. The other classification is mechanical versus chemical digestion. What do you mean by mechanical? I mean motility. What do you mean by chemical? I mean secretion, right? If you're talking mechanical, we're talking motility. We're talking the myenteric plexus in the musculosa. But if you're talking chemical, secretions, submucosal plexus in the submucosa. What are you secreting? GI enzymes and GI hormones. What's the purpose of the enzyme? Digestion, so that I can later absorb. What's the purpose of the hormones? They will stimulate or inhibit motility, and secretion. When it comes to glands, these are cells that can secrete. We have some of them inside the GI tract, some of them are outside, called accessory glands. Accessory glands include salivary glands, pancreas, liver, and gallbladder. Digestive system is about eating and drinking, and you have stimuli for satiety and hunger. Don't forget to say thank you to your hypothalamus. It contains the satiety center and the hunger center. We said before that leptin is like Lipton tea, like a tea bag with a very thin thread. Leptin wants you to be thin, but ghrelin wants you to become like a fat gargoyle. It wants you to keep eating and eating and eating. Here is the tongue. We'll talk about the salivary secretions for different parts of the tongue. If you want to secrete saliva for the anterior 2/3 of the tongue, talk to the facial nerve, which is cranial nerve number 7. If you want to secrete saliva for the back of the tongue, talk to cranial nerve number 9, which is the glossopharyngeal. This is your GI tract from top to bottom. Who is the hero of the GI tract? Sympathetic or parasympathetic? Parasympathetic. Be specific. Cranial nerve number 10, the vagus. The vagus supplies all of your GI tract except the upper end and the lower end. Who's going to supply the upper end? 7 and 9. This is the tongue. Remember, front is 7, back is 9. Who's going to supply the lower end? The pelvic nerve. The pelvic nerve is going to take over from this area until the end, with the exception of the anal canal below the pectinate line, but that's a story for another time. Speaking of the anal canal, you have an internal anal sphincter and an external anal sphincter. The internal is involuntary, which means autonomic nervous system. The external is voluntary, which means somatic nervous system. So let's eat, alright? Food is here: mouth, oropharynx, esophagus, stomach, small intestine, which has 3 parts: duodenum, jejunum, and ileum. After the ileum, you have the cecum, which contains the appendix, ascending colon, transverse colon, descending colon, sigmoid colon, rectum, anal canal. The pancreas is my hero. Why? The pancreas alone can complete the process of digestion from A to Z, from start to finish. And I'm talking about the exocrine pancreas, to be specific. It can help you digest proteins, fat, or carbohydrates. Whether you're eating protein or fat or carbohydrate, the end result after digestion and absorption and metabolism is acetyl-CoA enters into the TCA cycle. Boom, we got some energy. This is some intracellular digestion with cellular respiration. You can eat carbs, proteins, and fat. These are macromolecules, but in order for you to absorb them, you have to first break them down into micromolecules. Carbs get broken down into glucose, fructose, galactose, aka monosaccharides. Proteins get broken down into amino acids, maybe some and tripeptides as well. Lipids get broken down into free fatty acids and to monoacylglycerol. Let's review digestion from head to toe. Let's start in the mouth. Mechanical and chemical. What do you mean by mechanical? Movement, mastication. What do you mean by chemical? Secretion, salivation, especially the salivary amylase. Why? To digest carbohydrates. Break down that starch into smaller molecules such as maltose and dextrin. How many salivary glands do you have? Thousands. How many major salivary glands do you have? 3 pairs. The end result is a lovely bolus that will leave the mouth, and then we'll go to the pharynx. You swallow it, called deglutition, esophagus, and then the esophagus will give it to the stomach. How? By peristalsis, which goes downwards. Reverse peristalsis is not normal, that's vomiting. Let's talk about stomach. Mechanical versus chemical. Mechanical, motility. Chemical, secretion. Secretion of what? Hormones and enzymes, and the acid from the parietal cells. Pepsinogen from the chief cells. Pepsinogen is not active. How do I convert it to the active? You need some acid, which came from the parietal cell. The parietal cell has another function: intrinsic factor for vitamin B12 absorption. Otherwise, you suffer from megaloblastic anemia. G cells in the stomach will secrete gastrin, which is pro-stomach, motility and secretion. All the other GI hormones are anti-stomach. Mucus glands for mucus to protect the stomach itself from the acidity. Otherwise, the acid will digest the stomach itself. Delta cell secretes the doofus somatostatin, the universal inhibitor. Enterochromaffin-like cells secrete histamine, which will stimulate the parietal cells to secrete more acid. After the stomach, we have the small intestine, mechanical, motility, chemical secretion of what? Enzymes for digestion, especially carbohydrates and protein, and hormones such as CCK, pro-enzyme secretion, pro-bile secretion, secretin, pro-water secretion, pro-bicarbonate secretion, and somatostatin, the doofus, the universal inhibitor. After you digest, the small intestine will also help you absorb. Speaking of digestion, what does the small intestine digest? Carbohydrates and proteins. Why carbohydrates? Because your duodenum secretes maltase to digest maltose, isomaltase for isomaltose, lactase for lactose, sucrase for sucrose. When you digest maltose, it becomes 2 molecules of glucose. Lactose becomes glucose and galactose. Sucrose becomes glucose and fructose. Next, proteins. Why? Because the small intestine secretes aminopeptidase, dipeptidase, enteropeptidase. They will break down peptides into amino acids. Enteropeptidase has a second function, to activate trypsinogen into trypsin and to activate procarboxypeptidase into carboxypeptidase. Where did these two come from? From the pancreas. Let's talk about GI hormones, not enzymes, hormones, not exocrine, endocrine. First is the only one that's pro-stomach, Mr. Gastrin, secrete from the G cells in the stomach. Function, pro-motility and secretion of the gastric, of the stomach. Next, secretin, secreted by the S cells in the upper part of small intestine. Function, it has the function of mitigating the acidity. How? By secreting water and bicarbonate from the duct cells of the pancreas. These duct cells will release water and bicarbonate. As you know, bicarbonate is a base, is an alkali, will neutralize the acidity that's coming from the stomach. Next, cholecystokinin pancreozymin, CCK. Why do you call it cholecystokinin? Because it moves the gallbladder. It squeezes the gallbladder to release the bile for emulsification of fat. Why do you call it pancreozymin? Because it goes to the pancreas, especially the acinar cells, and tells it to secrete enzymes, such as digestive enzymes, e.g. trypsinogen, chymotrypsinogen, procarboxypeptidase, lipase, colipase, amylase, etc. Somatostatin is a doofus from the delta cell or the D cell. It's a universal inhibitor. It inhibits everything. It inhibits motility of everything. It inhibits secretions of everything. It even inhibits its own secretion. Make sure to know your anatomy. Left hepatic duct from the left lobe of the liver. Right hepatic duct from the right lobe. Boom, they combine into the common hepatic duct. Common hepatic duct is going to join the cystic duct of the gallbladder to make the common bile duct. Some Joe Rogan action. This common bile duct is going to join the pancreatic duct and they will open together into the second part of the duodenum. Let's talk about the pancreas alone. It has endocrine and exocrine. Today's topic is about exocrine pancreas. The exocrine pancreas has the acinar cells and the duct cells. Acinar cells secrete digestive enzymes. Duct cells secrete water and bicarbonate. What's the stimulus for the acinar cell? CCK. What's the stimulus for the duct? Secretin. The pancreas alone can complete the process of digestion from alpha to omega, from start to finish. It can help you digest proteins. How? Via trypsin, chymotrypsin, and carboxypeptidase. They are secreted in the beginning in the inactive form. They will get activated by the enteropeptidase, and then you have the active trypsin. Trypsin will activate his friends, and you have all of them active to digest peptides into amino acids. The pancreas also can help you digest lipids. How? Lipase, colipase, phospholipase, cholesterol esterase, etc. We break down the big triglycerides into free fatty acids and 2-monoacylglycerol. The pancreas also can help you digest carbohydrates. How? By secreting the pancreatic amylase, not to be confused with the salivary amylase. And this amylase will also help you break down the big carbohydrates into maltose and dextrin. So the pancreas can help you digest the non-fats and the fats. It can help you digest the water-soluble and the lipid-soluble. When it helps you digest lipid-solubles, it needs some assistance from the liver/gallbladder, i.e. bile, for emulsification of fat. Now let's take each macromolecule alone and talk about its digestion. First, carbohydrates. We start as starch or glycogen, and then the amylase will convert those into maltose and isomaltose. Before you know it, maltase and isomaltase from the intestine are going to break these down into 2 molecules of glucose. How about lactose? By lactase, which comes from the small intestine, it will become glucose and galactose, and then you absorb them. After this, sugarcane, sucrose. By sucrase from the intestine, glucose and fructose. Fibers are carbohydrate too, but they contain cellulose in the cell wall of the plant. And unfortunately or fortunately, your body does not contain cellulase enzyme. Next, protein digestion. All right, we need the stomach, we need the intestine, we need the pancreas. Stomach, why? HCl will convert pepsinogen into pepsin. Pepsin will break down proteins, and then the intestine will also break down proteins, thanks to intestinal enzymes and pancreatic enzymes. Intestinal enzymes such as what? Enterokinase, aminopeptidase, and some dipeptidases. Alright, pancreatic enzymes such as what? Such as trypsinogen, which will become trypsin, chymotrypsinogen, which will become chymotrypsin, proelastase, which will become elastase, procarboxypeptidase, which will become carboxypeptidase, and before you know it, we have broken down the proteins into amino acids. Let's absorb them. Pause and review. Next, let's digest fat. Here's the fat that you eat. Don't forget the fat-soluble vitamins, please. In order for you to absorb the fat and the fat-soluble vitamins, you need 3 organs to be intact. 1, liver and biliary system. 2, pancreas. 3, the gut. If you want to absorb carbs and proteins, these are water-soluble. They go to blood vessels. But if you want to absorb fat, this is lipid-soluble, water-insoluble. It cannot go to blood vessels. Where do we go to? Lymph vessels, lacteals, baby. Do you remember the story of the micelles? Package me into chylomicrons, boom, send me to the lymph, which will take me eventually to the thoracic duct, which will take me to the left subclavian vein, which will take me to the right atrium of the heart. And this is why bile is super important. The micelles, hydrophilic head, hydrophobic tail, organize me, and then package me, chylomicrons, send me to lacteals. This is how you absorb fat. Please pause and review. In order for me to digest and absorb fat, I need the pancreas and I need the bile as well. Now let's talk about absorption. After you digested them, after you broke these macromolecules down into small micromolecules, let's absorb them. If you are the grandson of carbohydrate or protein, you are water soluble. You will go to blood vessels, and then we'll take you to the portal veins, liver, hepatic veins, inferior vena cava, back to the heart. But if you are the loyal son of fat, you are lipid soluble, water insoluble, you cannot go to blood vessels. You'll go to lacteals, which will take you to thoracic duct, left subclavian vein, superior vena cava, back to the heart. Let's do it again. If you are water soluble, i.e. the product of carbohydrate or protein digestion, you go to the blood route. But if you are lipid, you go to the lymph route, especially if you are a big lipid. And then the blood route will take you to portal vein, liver, hepatic veins, inferior vena cava, heart. But if you are a big lipid, lymph vessel, thoracic duct, left subclavian vein in the base of your neck, superior vena cava, heart. This is the absorption of carbs and proteins in the small intestine. At the basolateral border, there is primary sodium potassium ATPase. This is primary active transport. Dependent on this pump, there is a secondary active transport, which is going to take sodium and glucose together in the famous sodium-glucose cotransporter. Try to remember this one because it's going to come again in the kidney's proximal convoluted tubule. Just keep that in mind. Sodium is going down gradient thanks to the activity of the primary ATPase, but it's taking glucose against gradient, fructose against gradient, galactose against gradient, amino acids, dipeptides, tripeptides against gradient. Thank you, sodium, for helping all of these people get absorbed. Once we enter into the mucosal cell, now it's downhill from here. Why? Because the blood keeps pushing the glucose away. Hey, glucose, you came here. Just go away, go away. Why? To decrease their concentration here in the blood, which makes their concentration in the mucosal cell relatively high, creating a concentration gradient between high and low, and then you have it. Simple diffusion. downhill along the gradient. Vitamins. If you're water-soluble vitamins, we treat you as if you are a protein product or carb product. You are water-soluble. Go the blood route. But if you are a fat-soluble vitamin, KEDA, we treat you like we treat fat products. You go the lymph route, the lacteal. Here is everything about digestion in one amazing slide. Here is carbohydrate digestion, protein digestion, fat digestion. After you digest, it's time to absorb. But hey, medicosis, what if we were not digested? You will not be absorbed, and you will be excreted in the poop. Here is your anatomy. Pause and review. Don't forget that your colon is full of bacteria, and this is an example of symbiotic relationship. Bacteria benefits by eating your food, but you will also benefit by getting some vitamins from the bacteria. What's the normal function of the colon? Reabsorb salt and water, alright, leaving the poop more concentrated, and this is the stool, feces species. If you happen to reabsorb less water, more water is going to stay in your colon, causing diarrhea. If you do the opposite, you get constipation. You have to strike the balance. Speaking of balance, I have a CNS pharmacology course on my website, medicosisperfectionalis.com. Learn about all of these classes of medications. You can download this course today. It has 20 videos, PDF notes, and cases with answers, of course. To learn about how the kidney functions, check out my renal physiology course at medicosisperfectionalis.com. Learn about proximal tubule, loop of Henle, distal tubule, micturition reflex, GFR, and much more. Or better, you can get my high yields surgery course at medicosisperfectionalis.com. And for the next 3 students only, get a 40% discount towards any course on my website by using promo code Toxidrome. Also, if you want to download these handwritten illustrations that I use for my videos, they are available to download on my website. Thank you for watching. Please subscribe, hit the bell, and click on the join button. You can support me here or here. Go to my website to download my courses. Be safe, stay happy, study hard. This is Medicosis Perfectionalis, where medicine makes perfect sense.